Kevin McCullough.
My next guest is someone who is quite concerned about some of the actions of the United Nations as it has related to the ongoing conflict in Israel, where the Israelis justifiably continue to try to protect themselves by dealing with the terrorist threat that is Hamas, but really by extension, the state of Iran. Joining us from Israel is Hillel Neuer, who is the executive director of UN Watch, a human rights organization in Geneva, Switzerland. Hillel is joining us from Israel. Hillel, thank you so much for taking time to be here.
Thank you. I'm actually still in Washington, D.C., but thank you.
Well, never mind. Yeah, you came here actually to deal with the subject of UNRWA. And for people that are not initiated as to what the conflict was, give us a little lexicon on what we're dealing with in that.
Well, in Geneva, where I'm based, there is the UN refugee agency known as UNHCR. They are charged with helping refugees who are fleeing persecution and war around the world. Could be in Sudan and Syria, Ukraine, and so forth. And their mission is to resettle refugees. You're a refugee fleeing war and persecution. We help you find refuge in another country, and your life moves on. There's another agency which is unique in the world. It's called UNRWA, UNRWA, the Relief and Works Agency, and it was created back in the late 1940s to help Palestinian Arabs who fled the war of 1948-49. And it's unique because no other people in the world, the Sudanese, the Syrians, the folks in Myanmar, they don't have their own agency. And this agency has a completely different mandate. They do not seek to resolve the problem. They do not seek to resettle refugees. The contrary. So if you're a refugee who fled that war in 1949 and you went to Lebanon, for example, which is a neighboring state, it's just a few dozen miles from northern Israel, and you're an Arab who was living in Palestine and now you live in Lebanon, your neighbors speak the same language, worship the same God, culturally the same, but they've never been integrated. And I don't mean, just socially, I mean legally. The Lebanese for nearly 80 years wouldn't let Palestinians who've been brought up generations there work in Lebanon or be citizens. So they're considered Palestinian refugees. And there's an agency, UNRWA, which perpetuates this. UNRWA does not seek to resettle the Palestinian refugees from 1948 in the countries that they're in Lebanon, in Egypt, in Gaza, in Jordan, but rather tells them your home is in Israel and your kids and your grandkids, and one day you're going to go back and basically undo the state of Israel.
So that's the mandate of the organization. Why does the UN and the international community kind of countenance this organization?
Well, that was exactly my question before the Congress. It had its own history. UNRWA began with benign motives. The United States took the lead in 1949 approximately to help these refugees, as they did in other places. Let's say the South Korean refugees, North Korean, their situation was resolved and South Korea became a magnificent success story. But what happened is the Palestinians around already by the 1950s said, wait a minute, if we accept integration and if we move on, then the war is over and the Jews have a state.
Yeah.
And the Jews have a state because, the UN voted for a Jewish state and an Arab state. The Arabs said, no, we do not accept partition. We do not accept two states. There's no Jewish state, and 5 Arab nations declared war on Israel, and they lost. Egypt conquered Gaza, which was supposed to be a Palestinian state. Egypt took it over. Jordan took over the West Bank. There was no Palestinian Arab state, and the Palestinian Arabs and the Arab nations said, no Israel. We refuse to accept Israel. Since then, in the past, 30 odd years, we've had Egypt sign peace with Israel and Jordan and United Arab Emirates, Morocco, Bahrain. But the Palestinians still say our children, grandchildren, they're all refugees. And the one that's doing all this is UNRWA. And it's become this perverse thing where we're paying for it. U.S. taxpayers are paying over $300 million a year. You gave $1 billion since 2021 to UNRWA. And what we exposed is beyond the mere fact, which is the essence of the problem, that UNRWA's mandate only perpetuates grievance, war, and resentment and leads to the October 7th massacre. UNRWA's narrative leads to the massacre. But the agency, we learned in the past week, and we've been warning about it for 10 years, but the Wall Street Journal reported that there are 1,200 terrorists, operatives working for UNRWA. 6,000 have close family members who belong to Hamas or Islamic Jihad. A dozen were actually involved in the massacre. So this agency is infested with terrorism, and we need to replace it, find other UN agencies that can distribute the aid. There's the World Health Organization. There's the humanitarian agency called OCHA. We can find replacements, and that's what we're working to do.
So what would you like of Americans that are hearing about this for the first time to do? What's something practical that they can respond to this with?
Well, I think any American would be disgusted. I'm a Swiss citizen, and I live in Switzerland. I pay Swiss taxes, and my money is paying for teachers like Elham Mansour, who say, by Allah, we need to slaughter all the Jews, and if you don't do it, you're violating God's will. I'm paying for it. You're paying for it too. And if you're disgusted that your money is paying for the teachers of terrorism, and just go on unwatch.org, my website, unwatch.org, you will see the UNRWA's terrorgram. You'll see all the teachers, their photos, their UNRWA contract ID, and their celebration of terrorism. If you don't want to pay for that, send a message to your representative, whether it's on Twitter, Instagram, email, send a message and say defund UNRWA.
Now.
Not temporarily.
Actually, let me do something for my listeners. The phone number is 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. That's the Capitol switchboard. You can talk to your senator, you can talk to your representative, and you can let all of them know that you would like to see immediate tax monies removed from funding UNRWA indefinitely going forward. Hillel, Neuer, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for taking time to tell us about it, and we wish you only the best in the days to come.
Thank you so much.
You got it. Again, 202-224-3121, and tell your representative, defund UNRWA now. 202-224-3121. Kevin McCullough coming right back.